call this public meeting to order at 5:35 p.m. We are going to be recording this meeting, even though there's no one from the public in attendance in person. Then someone could ostensibly go watch the recording to hear about the Corrective Action Plan if they want to later on. We can start off with some introductions. I'm Greg Pelker. I work for the Rutland Regional Planning Commission. Go to the left.
I'm Steve Shaw. I work for Weston & Sampson Engineers.
Christy Herzer, State of Vermont.
Justin Belden, one of the principals of Southern Wales.
Carly Carey, I work with Weston.
Cooper Badvetter from the Chamber and Economic Development of the Rutland region.
And online, Dory, can you introduce yourself?
Dory Parr, EPA Brownfields Program.
And see Tyler Richardson as well online.
Hey everyone, Tyler Richardson with the Mayor's Office.
Right, I believe that's everyone. So as you can see here on the agenda, this is going to be a fairly brief meeting. We're going to go through an overview of the site and the site history, take a look into the contents of the Corrective Action Plan, and then finish up with any public comment and Q&A from the public. So the site in question here is 27 Wales Street, 33 Wales Street, 92 Willow Street, and 43 Center Street in Rutland, Vermont. It is at the center of downtown Rutland, and the site's management system number is 2008-3813, and it's a little bit less than 1 acres at 0.89 acres. And the site is owned privately by Center Wales LLC. The history of the site, in very broad terms, is that in 1868, the Berwick Hotel was first constructed in the city of Rutland. And then in 1934, the Rutland Herald began using a portion of the site as well. And then in 1973, a fire destroyed the Berwick Hotel building and tragically killed 5 people. And then in 1981, this site, which is now partially a vacant lot, was purchased by the Rutland Herald and used as a parking lot. And again, very broad strokes there. That brings us to the assessment phase here. So assessment on the site began in 2007 and funded through the EPA via the Rutland Regional Planning Commission. An extensive amount of assessment has been completed on the site, which you can see in the assessment timeline. And this is all led up to the Corrective Action Plan, which we will be reviewing today. I'm now going to hand it off to Steve Shaw from Weston & Sampson.
So, we've been working, Weston & Sampson has been working on the site since 2013. I've been working on it for almost 10 years now. So with various different developers, entities, RPC, Rutland RPC, the state, different private developers. So we're kind of excited to really get to actually implement the thing we've been talking about and thinking about for, over a decade. So a lot of assessment work has gone on since really the most recent stuff started in around 2010, as Greg showed. And then it kind of languished for a little while, and then it came back to life. But the assessment work basically has found a couple things in soil and a little bit in groundwater. So basically the things that we're concerned about, the hotel burned down. It wasn't just a hotel, though, it was also Paul's Dry Cleaning. So it burnt down in 1973. And at that point, the building was razed basically and buried on site, or a bulk of it. So the major contaminant or issue on the site is really the asbestos containing material, which goes from just below the surface to 10 or more feet below ground. Due to the dry cleaner There's also some volatile organic compounds, trichloroethylene from the dry cleaner. And then there's some, on another part of the site, there's also some benzene in the soil. So those are volatile organic compounds. And then lastly, there's metals in the groundwater and per and polyfluorinated alkyl substances. Fluoroalkyl substances. The expert there. And so basically what I didn't know how many of the public were going to be here. So a lot of times the people are interested in what are the compounds that we're talking about. So one of the volatile organic compounds is tetrachloroethene. People often call it PERC or perchloroethylene. It's commonly used in dry cleaning, and it's considered a possible carcinogen. And I'll point this out later, but the concentration of PCE in the soil is at residential direct contact level. So it's not as contaminated for like an industrial or non-residential use direct contact. So there is PCE in soil, but at below non-residential concentrations in the vicinity of the former dry cleaner. We also see a little bit of benzene on site, and that's beneath the Rutland Herald building, which is on, and I realized I should have put a site plan up first, but the Rutland Herald building, there's some benzene in soil beneath the building, again, at below non-residential levels. And this is commonly sourced from industrial uses, car exhaust, cigarette smoke, industrial emissions, gasoline, and it's also considered a possible carcinogen. And that's beneath the building. And then in groundwater, the ones that I talked about are the per and polyfluorinated alkyl substances. And these are the chemicals that you may have heard of as the forever chemicals. They're used in many, many, many products. We're finding them in more and more things. And again, those exposure to that is linked to certain health problems. And then lastly, and really the bulk of what we're concerned with, other than the asbestos-containing material, are the polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These are products of incomplete combustion, such as campfires, but all sorts of other things. They're very common in industrial places where cars and industry and other sources of petroleum products that don't break down or incomplete combustion. So we see that in several spots of the site, but we assume that it's pretty much throughout in the fill material in the site. And then, so to recap, kind of the contaminants concern that we're worried about at this site are PCE, benzene, pH, and asbestos in soil, and those exceed the VSS and the Vermont soil standards for residential use. They don't exceed the soil standards for non-residential use. And then groundwater, we see lead, arsenic, and antimony, and the PFAS compounds. And that's a soil boring from the site. You can see kind of the fill material kind of on the bottom there, and the more clayey stuff below that, above it. So basically, the corrective action plan, there's several pieces of it, but the bulk of it is to remove roughly 5,555 cubic yards of contaminated soil. So that's a lot of soil. We believe there's somewhere around 6,000 or more cubic yards of contaminated soil. And then the plan is to remove that as part of the redevelopment plan, because the parking area will go beneath the building, and then cover any remaining contaminated soil with an engineered barrier. And I'll show what that is in a second. But essentially, it's going to be the bulk of the engineered barrier will be the building kind of slab and any pavement. And as I don't think we have on the figure yet, but the footprint of the building covers the entire part of the site that's not the Rutland Herald building. And then to maintain land use restrictions so that in the future, everyone knows that beneath the building there are remaining contaminants, so they can't disturb it without connecting with the DEC and getting approval to do that. And so here is, let's just start with the other picture. So here is This is the site as it is. It's kind of hard to see, but you see the Rutland Herald building is the building up at the top, and then there's a portion of it that juts down on the southeast side. That's going to be demolished. And then everything else south of that is the parking area right now. And then in the future development, this is the rough footprint of the building. So you can see that the building covers the entire impacted area. So once that soil gets dug out, the engineered barrier goes down, the building will be essentially a protective measure against any direct contact to the soil. So this is, it's kind of hard to see, but this is basically a picture of what the engineered barrier would look like. So in the state of Vermont, an impervious engineered barrier is basically some sort of impervious material, 6 inches of clean material, and then a geotextile boundary of some point. And the geotextile is basically there to tell people below this area is where contaminated soil is. So if someone were to dig it up in the future, not only would they know that there's a land use restriction, but then they get to this barrier and then they can plan that, okay, so everything below this, we're going to have to handle or deal with as contaminated material. And I think that, and then so for, as I mentioned before, there's groundwater that's impacted with metals and PFAS. And the plan for that is to reinstall the existing monitoring well network so that we can monitor the metals concentrations and the PFAS concentrations over time to see where they're coming from, where we believe that they're going, and to make sure eventually that at the compliance point, at the boundary of the site, that we're not seeing exceedances of the groundwater standards. And that is the bulk of that's basically the gist of the corrective action plan. Currently, Weston Sampson has been working on the corrective action plan. That's my number if anyone needs to reach me. But the site manager for the state is Christy Herzer, who's here. And so if you read the corrective action plan, you'll see her name up front. She's the site manager, the person to ask if you have questions that the state might be able to answer. Anything that I missed or folks would like some more clarity on?
Yes, we could open it up now to general public comments and any further questions. Good. So hearing none, we're gonna adjourn the meeting at 5:47 p.m. Thank you all for being here. I know some of you came a ways, and yes, brief meeting. Nothing wrong with that.